Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the fantasy master Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How's it going over there, Gray?
What's going on, man?
Oh, just having fun being sick. It's a really fun way to start the season. I strongly recommend it to everybody to just get sick at the start of the season, and that way it's over. Obviously, if you get sick once, it can't happen again the rest of the season. So that's my plan, at least.
Do you remember on In Living Color, Head Detective?
I do not. In Living
man.
Color, I watched a little bit, but
Too young.
I'm just gonna say that I'm not that old.
I'm doing the Head Detective right now. I'm investigating. I'm Head Detective, and I'm investigating Ohtani.
Who was that character? Who on Living Color played that character?
It was the stupidest character. It was like they would just have like a head, like obviously sitting on top of a desk like this, and it would be like, here's the Head Detective.
So you're looking into Ohtani for everybody in the baseball world, making sure that's sort of correctly graded.
MLB has just hired me to investigate Ohtani. I'm going to here I am. You gotta have to watch us on YouTube because I'm going right now to investigate.
Slowly going off screen to investigate. He was called in. He's getting the hook. Literally, if we're going back in the old times here, getting the literal hook off the stage and being pulled away from the stage here, Gray. His former interpreter had gambling allegations. Any gambling allegations comes with gambling debts. Gambling debts comes with stealing from your employer, obviously. And then on top of it all, he may have actually just made himself up. Like some of the information he made about himself just may be completely inaccurate. So this has been a fun little segue to start the 2024 baseball season, Greg.
Yeah. God forbid MLB were to have just like a normal into the season, a normal beginning to the season. So actually I just got back from Vegas and I'm kind of exhausted. I don't know how Ohtani did it, man. It's a two-way player on the field and at the craps table. Hey, Shohei, why are you playing the pass and the don't pass? It doesn't make sense, man. You're not saving any money here. You're just, it's not good. What are you doing? Why are you playing every number on the roulette table? Come on, bro. You're still losing on zero. What are you doing, bro?
Look, I just wanted to win one way or another, okay? It still is a win.
Oh, man. Yeah, Ohtani's a two-way player everywhere, on the field and in the casino. So, Epi, okay. So I was in Vegas for the main event, NFBC main event. I shared a team with Donkey. We could talk about my team after the Ohtani stuff. So it was shocking to me that there was a ton of people in Vegas who were really concerned about Ohtani, to the point where, like, in one draft, someone passed him at 12 overall. It's a 15-team league, by the way. So someone passed him at 12 overall. And then again, in the second round, they passed him again. And I was like, I don't get it, man. Like, what? Like, I understand that if he is found, to be betting on baseball, or if or wiring money to the bookie, that both of those scenarios would get him suspended. So and this is a big one. A is a big one. MLB is not really investigating anything. Let's be honest. They're not investigating Ohtani. Come on, man. Like, seriously. Like, think back to, I know some of you might be a little bit younger than me, but think back to Barry Bonds. His head got bigger than his actual shoulders. His head was so big from steroids, and they still looked the other way and let him pass Hank Aaron. No one is investigating Ohtani. He is the MLB meal ticket. It's no way is it happening ever. Like, honestly, I could see the MLB investigation would basically be like, so what did other people find? Okay, that's it. That's the MLB investigation. I could do an MLB investigation. They're basically going to be opening up The Athletic and being like, so let's see what happened. Because that's their investigation. It's not like they're going to be like, oh, let's bring Ohtani downtown, put a hanging light bulb over his head and interrogate him. I mean, come on, man. Like, this is like MLB's investigation into this is going to be so ridiculous. I mean, they didn't even want to. So going back to Friday of last week, they didn't even want to investigate until they realized it does not look good to not investigate at all, or at least to pretend to investigate. MLB's, honestly, they were like, okay, after all the stuff came out about Ohtani and Epe, they were like, well, yeah, we don't need to investigate. And then like the quiet part was said out loud. It was like, maybe we should pretend to investigate so it looks better for Ohtani. Because before, when they weren't investigating, people were like, oh man, they are obviously, this is ridiculous. They're not investigating because Ohtani's like the biggest star and they don't want him to be in trouble, so they're not going to investigate. And it's like, well, in a lack of investigation makes more people skeptical, and it feels like a conspiracy, and it becomes like this whole like underground movement of like, wow, Ohtani must have been like gambling himself if MLB won't investigate. But then MLB says, okay, well, yeah, we'll investigate. Sure we will. And now everyone's like, well, MLB's investigating. I mean, what can you do? You can't do anything else about that. They're at least investigating, right? So you have that, which is a big one, okay? So that's A on why Ohtani is going to be totally fine. Then B is maybe as big. The interpreter, Epe, he has said he stole money from Ohtani. That's what he has. At first, he said to ESPN, he was like, Ohtani lent me the money. And then clearly Ohtani's people went to his Ohtani's reps, his attorneys and his agent and his manager and everyone, like they were like, you can't lend him money to pay off a bookie. That's not good, man. That doesn't fly, bro. That's not gonna fly with anyone. That is actually a crime. So at that point, Ohtani said, oh, my bad. So then he probably went back to Epe and he was like, bro, I'm sorry, man. I can't be seen giving you $4.5 million. Like, I cannot do it legally. So you're going to have to say you stole money from me, and then we'll figure out things later. So Epe then went back on what he originally said and said, oh no, I stole the money. So at that point, Epe has said he has stolen the money. Now, you can't, there's no way of saying whether or not Ohtani was sitting over Epe's shoulder, or Epe was sitting or standing over Ohtani's shoulder when the money was wired. Who's to say? The only people that know really are Ohtani and Epe has already said he stole the money. So at this point, there's nothing to investigate. It's like unless you had a camera inside Ohtani's house drained on his computer and you see Ohtani actually making the wire transfer, there's no way of knowing either way of whether or not Ohtani was the one who did it. I'm assuming I mean, honestly, realistically, the most realistic scenario is Ohtani wired the money for Epi, which would be illegal. But Epi has already said he stole it, so it doesn't matter what really happened. Like, it's not like it's not like Ohtani's gonna get in trouble because of he really did wire the money, because at the end of the day, Epi is falling on the sword, so to speak. He's taking the blame. There's no way of knowing otherwise. So back to my original point, I really can't believe people were passing on Ohtani at 12 and then again in the second round. Like, that is crazy to me. I wish he would have fell to us in the second round. Like, we had pick 5, so there was no way we were taking him at 5. I mean, like, my rankings are on the site. I don't think Ohtani is at 5. I'm not taking him because of the position eligibility. But if he were to have made it back to me in the second round, I absolutely would have taken him. But he didn't make it back in our league. So yeah, I just cannot. I can't imagine a scenario where Ohtani gets in trouble. I honestly can't. I can't imagine a scenario unless he were to say, I gambled, or if he were to say, I was the one who wired the money. But apart from him saying either of those things, all he has to say is, like, let the investigation, play its course, and we'll see what happens. But I didn't do anything. My former interpreter stole the money from me. That's all he has to say, and he's in the clear. So, I mean, otherwise, I can't imagine how he gets in trouble or suspended. I don't know. What's your take, B-Don?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's going to happen, especially for this season. I don't think that, they would pass down any penalty for this season that would affect what's going on for this year. I think I'm probably I'm in agreement that, the MLB is trying their best not to find anything on this. They went down to the local escape room, found the people with that didn't escape the room that was made up for, stupid people, and they give them hints and literally everything you can do to get out of this escape room, and they still don't get out. And that's the people that MLB is hiring to look into Ohtani. So no, I don't think there's anything to worry about in regards to taking him. I am curious as to why you called out the guy in 12th and not the guy at 13, 14, 15. But that's neither here nor there.
Because I actually know the guy at 12, and he told me he purposely was not taking Ohtani. I don't know the other guys. I'm assuming they purposely passed over Ohtani, but I don't know. I don't know their deal.
I would hope in a main event you didn't unpurposely mess up your second round pick. Like, if that's happening in a main event, Gray, please tell me who that is, so that I can make sure
so listen to this. So at 12, this person, I won't call them out by name, but this person took.
But you can go look up the draft and figure out who this is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they don't care. I mean, by the way, they're taking on Ohtani wasn't a singular take. A lot of people were like, I'm not drafting Ohtani in the first round. And I was like, if I had picked 12 and he was there, I would take Ohtani. Anyway, this person took Jose Ramirez and then Matt Olson. So it's not like they took bad. It's not. I mean, I don't have I have maybe Ramirez's knees, and he's getting older. But in general, they're not terrible picks. It's just like Ohtani basically does what Olson does, but with also 15 to 20 steals. So, I mean, that's like, that feels like an easy call to me. I don't know. Would you have drafted Ohtani?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I still have Ohtani in my top 10. I have him over both of those guys. So, I mean, I'm going against all logic in my rankings that I've put together to go away from Ohtani in that point. We already mentioned that neither of us are concerned about anything happening, at least for this season. So yeah, I mean, the only league where that may not apply is and yes, I'm going to throw our CBS leagues under the bus here, is the weird CBS leagues where you don't auction reserve picks. So like if you tie up utility in those, it's kind of different. That being said, Ohtani still goes at cost. So that may be the one place that I can think of if you're in that, or I think one of your either Tout or Labor does that as well. Like in those drafts, I guess I could see maybe pushing him down a little bit because of the position eligibility, but that's really about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the position eligibility is like a little bit of a factor. Like so Donkey and I in the main event, we had pick number 5, and we wanted Mookie Betts because of position eligibility. So he's going to have his second. He will have short soon, and he already has outfield. So, I mean, that's helpful. Is it like, is it helpful enough where like some people were taking Mookie Betts as high as I think 3? I don't know if I wouldn't pass over Bobby Witt, say, because like Bobby Witt does basically Betts plus potentially 40 steals. So I would definitely take Bobby Witt. I would have taken Julio Rodriguez too before Betts. So it's not like position eligibility is everything, but we were happy to get Mookie Betts at 5 because of the position eligibility, passing on, obviously passing on a bunch of people, but specifically Corbin Carroll. So we went Betts instead of Carroll, even though I would say normally in like a 12-team league, I would probably just go with Corbin Carroll because I'm fine with Carroll there. And the outfield only versus second short in outfield isn't really that big of a deal in a 12-team mixed league. So yeah, but I would have taken Ohtani. I mean, in my league, he went 14 overall. But the main events are weird too because there's a lot of pitching goes. Like Strider went 2. There's like there's by the end of the 3rd round, there looks like there's about 12 starters off the board. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of pitching goes. A lot of pitching goes super early. Some people take like, one team took Trey Turner and then turned around and took four pitchers after Trey Turner at pick 10. They took Kirby, Edwin Diaz, Aaron Nola, and then Blake Snell. So, in a lot of leagues, people would say, oh, that's way too much pitching. But, the main event, people do different things. They try and, because there's an overall prize. So people tend to go like they want to have like, you're going to have the best pitching and the best hitting. So it's if you can get your pitching early, people, some people do that and then, go with, a lot of hitters later. It depends on how you build your team, really.
Yeah, I mean, the main event is its own monster. Spencer Strider didn't go later than 4, it looks like, in any main event. So that's if you've just been drafting normal leagues, that's quite a change because, he usually goes in the 1st round or early 2nd, but to see him go 1 through 4 is a pretty big adjustment. I don't know that I saw him go in the top, I would say 5 picks in any of my drafts that I was in. Like you said, main event is different.
We had
also draft is a little bit adjusted.
Right, exactly, totally. And at pick 5, I'll say I won't give you my whole team, but at pick 5, so we knew we wanted O'Neal Cruz in the 3rd round. So if you're doing it in your head, so it's 15 teams. So if you want, you have to. We would have had to take O'Neal Cruz in the 3rd round. Like that was the deal if we wanted O'Neal Cruz, which we absolutely wanted because he would have been gone by our 4th pick. So we basically knew we had to take a starter in the 2nd in order to take O'Neal Cruz in the 3rd. So we went Mookie Betts, Freddie Peralta, O'Neal Cruz, Bobby Miller, Wyatt Langford, Tanner Scott, Christian Walker, and then Shota, Jackson Chourio, Jordan Walker, and then that's the first 10 picks. So we have a sexy team. Really sexy. It's really sexy. I mean, O'Neal Cruz, Wyatt Langford, and Jackson Chourio. And I haven't even mentioned Jordan Walker. Woo, daddy. it's a upside team, I guess. Which, I mean, a lot of people probably look at our team and it's like, oh, it's way too risky, too upsidey. People like when we take like when we took Wyatt Langford, going on both sides of Wyatt Langford, Evan Phillips went right before our Langford pick, and Adley Rutschman went right after. So to give people an idea of kind of where we are in there, and then with Jackson Chourio, on both sides of Chourio was Nick Pivetta and Thairo Estrada. So it's like, so I think that illustrates how people are drafting versus what we're taking. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the team, to be honest. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm just looking through ADP because I'm just interested to see what happened at the different main events. O'Neal Cruz, Gray, has a min pick of 13 and a max of 116. That's got to be like one of the biggest differences of a guy taken in the first round in any league and then where his max pick sits. Like, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I know there's a couple that randomly.
That is not the main event, though. I wouldn't. That's like the main event. He wasn't going later than, I think, I want to say 40. I mean, he was going before our fourth pick. It was
okay. There must have been some old data in there. It's 34 and to 67, so a little bit tighter there.
I'll say O'Neal Cruz.
You guys were near min. I mean,
is that so it was well, we had to take him. See, it's like that's the weird thing about, like, with snake drafts. It's like if you see, so O'Neal Cruz's his ADP was 49 overall. So before our fourth pick. So if you look at, like, where you're sitting in a draft, it's like we were at 5. So it was either be near the minimum pick on O'Neal Cruz or potentially not get him. So it's like, what do you do there? It's like it's like ADP is only, that's as good as it goes with, like, ADP just is like an average. It doesn't mean like that's what you have to draft on, but there's a good chance if O'Neal Cruz is taken before our fourth pick, then you have to take the minimum on him. Otherwise, you're just not going to get him, So it's like, and then the same with Freddie Peralta. I mean, we were probably near the minimum on Freddie Peralta, but it was, again, it's like if you look at like the ADP on like most of these guys, it's like if we were waiting until the fourth round, like if we would have taken in the second round, if we wanted a pitcher in the second round, and I don't like Glasnow, I don't want Galen. I prefer Freddie Peralta. I mean, it is like Gausman has a little bit of, the injury issues or whatever. Skubal only threw 80 innings last year. Like, see, these are some of the pitchers we were looking at. Like if George Kirby or Louis Castillo were there at our second round pick, we would have taken either of them over Freddie Peralta, but they were gone already. Like George Kirby was taken 5 picks before our Freddie Peralta pick, and Louis Castillo was taken 4 picks before our Freddie Peralta pick. So there's like a bunch of pitchers already off the board. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 pitchers off the board already, and we're looking at Freddie Peralta or Gausman. And the Gausman, it's like, why mess with the Gausman? Seems like he's fine, and I haven't moved him in my rankings, but if he has an injury, why am I messing with that? And I feel I like Freddie Peralta a lot. So it's like, we take the minimum early pick on Freddie Peralta, but otherwise we weren't getting him. And then if we waited until the third round to take a pitcher, we wouldn't have been able to wait to the 4th round to take O'Neal Cruz. So we would have had to do like it would have been something like Betts, Pete Alonso, Jesus Luzardo, and then Bobby Miller, and we never would have gotten O'Neal Cruz. Or something in that range would have been what we would have had to have done if we wanted to go with a bat in the 2nd round. Because if we took a bat in the 2nd round, there's no way you can't wait until we wouldn't have been able to wait until the 60s to take our first pitcher. It would have been a mess. So, it is what it is. But yeah,
All right, let's move on from your draft that nobody cares about, and we can start talking about some things that people might actually care about. I had some stuff in here about how you approach the beginning of the season and fab runs and things. I don't know. I mean, we can talk about it real quick. When you're setting your first lineup for the year, obviously you're looking at the matchups because our first week is only 4 days. I mean, anything beyond that, is it strictly like who you draft first gets in there? Do you maybe like start some of your fun picks just to see how it goes? Or you maybe go the opposite way. You go with like the safe guys so you don't get an 0 for 15 to start the year. How do you look at it any differently than any other week of the season?
Well, I was saying on Saturdays, I'm on a TV show with Craig Mish Saturday mornings, and he asked me about Yamamoto, and he was like saying like, do you think it's right that people can get free looks, which means they don't have to start Yamamoto for that Korean series? And I was saying that I don't think it's right. Like, if you drafted a Yamamoto within your first 9 starters or first 9 pitchers, which everyone did, then you should have to start him. Like, that just seems wrong that you can like draft Yamamoto and then bench him. Like that seems ridiculous. That's kind of, I feel like that's a little bit on what you're saying, but in general, I start my best lineups. Like, you look at the Razzball tools, and you start your best lineup. So other than that, I don't know. Like, I'm not looking, if it's like, I don't know, let's just say Hunter Renfroe. I don't even know the people's schedules right now, but say Hunter Renfroe has 4 games and someone I drafted in front of him has 3 games. I'm probably starting the 4-game guy if, push comes to shove, unless the matchups are bad. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, but I don't really look at like where I drafted someone on whether or not I'm going to start them.
Yeah, I don't. I guess I mainly am just, whatever you drafted first is probably, your best guys. So that's generally who gets in your lineup. For starting pitchers, I will say, depending on the pitcher, I may look at their historical track record, see how they start the season, because there are definitely some pitchers whose, first month of the season tends to be really bad, and then they get it together. And then some that are vice versa. So I might look at just some splits and just see how they start the season. But in general, you're starting your guys. You got a lot of season to make out for. Anything that goes bad, and just getting some numbers out there just feels like the right way to go about it. In regards to the Korean series, I feel like that's one where, you got to know the league that you're in. If you've already drafted, you have to know if those games count or not. And if you haven't drafted, you have to still know whether they count or not, and then adjust in your draft and maybe put, Yamamoto in your on your bench spot rather than a starter spot, so he doesn't give you the stats. I mean, I feel like that's playing to the league rules. I don't see it as fair or not. Know your league rules and adapt. And to that, I'd say draft Jake Cronenworth and get all his RBIs that he already gave you, and then you can drop him back out in the pool on the first fab run too.
I hope everyone who picked up Daniel Hudson just for his vulture win, I hope he's locked into their lineups for until Sunday, and I hope he gives up like 7 earned runs this weekend. Like, honestly, I really do, because that is like ridiculous. Oh, I'm
I have no
drafting
problem with
Daniel
it.
Hudson for a win. Okay,
I
enjoy.
have absolutely no problem with it. I probably will do it. If it actually, I don't think those games count in the RCLs, and I think that's the only draft I have left. So I won't be doing it, but I would 100% do it. And I did draft Jake Cronenworth in a draft strictly to get his RBI, and I'm fine with him if he's locked in there because he's hitting in the middle of a Padres lineup. Like I didn't see that coming to begin with, and that's okay. Like if he goes 0 for 12 in the weekend, he's already giving me like 5 RBIs and like 4 hits, so I'm good with that. I guess let's talk about Yamamoto real quick. What are you taking anything from this first outing? It's obviously not the way that anybody who drafted him as high as you had to draft him wanted to see. What was your feeling in watching that game?
That was
Is it
again
a blip?
yeah. So anyway, so for Yamamoto, like that was again like talking to people at the main event. Like so many people, like he fell a good round or two, and so many people were out now, which is like, guys, like what are you doing, man? It's like this is like an extended spring training start in Korea. So you're assuming like I mean they fly in style, but it's still like a 12-hour flight. You're like, you're going over to Korea during spring training, essentially. And then, like, you're throwing an inning where he had no command and it looked like a mess. And that's like no reflection whatsoever on his actual ability. Like it's ridiculous to look at that start. It has nothing to do with anything. Like so you're basically looking at that start, that random March start in Korea. You're looking at that and you're throwing out the fact that he has 3 straight years where he was the best Japanese baseball pitcher ever. Like he was better than like he won the Triple Crown 3 years in a row in Japan. I mean, you're just throwing that away, and now he's suddenly a guy who got roughed up by the Padres in one random inning in Korea. Come on, man, it's stupid.
No, I mean I tend to agree with you. I don't think you should adjust everything that you thought was going to happen. I will say I always thought he was being overdrafted. Kind of obviously he has nasty stuff. I think he was a little overdrafted based on Singa's success. We've definitely seen high profile pitchers come over and struggle a little bit. And I will say it's not necessarily just a single start. He hasn't looked good in spring training. He's getting roughed up there. That being said, again, if anybody's freaking out and panicking, 1000% would take a deal on Yamamoto if somebody's trying to trade him at anything less than cost right now. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I wouldn't change where I had him in my rankings. Maybe that wasn't as high as some people had him, but I still think he's gonna be great. Like I don't really think that that's an issue. Moving on, Gray. Let's go ahead and talk about some other news outside of the Korea Dodgers Padres series. Gerrit Cole, I think he's probably the biggest injury to happen so far, has the right elbow nerve inflammation. He's going to miss at least a month to start the season. Luis Gil takes the 5th rotation spot for the Yankees. He's a fastball slider show me change. He doesn't really use it. 15 2/3 innings this spring training. He's had 5 earned runs and 23 strikeouts. He really doesn't have a lot of innings at any stop, so I kind of didn't have any numbers to tell everybody, but it basically high K, high walk guy, high velocity fastball slider. Like that's what you're looking at with Luis Gil. Where are you interested in picking up Luis Gil? Is it 12 team, 15? Is it AL only?
Actually, so in our main event, a 15-team mixed league, we drafted Louis Gill towards the end of the draft. Like I want to say 380 overall. So that gives you an idea of what I think of him. I wouldn't take him in a 12-team mixed league yet. I mean, he's still a streamer for me in a 12-team mixed league or shallower. in a 15-team mixed league that is, maybe shallower than what I just described at 385. Like maybe he's like the 7th or 8th starter on a 15-team mixed league. AL only, obviously, everyone's interested in AL only. But yeah, I like him. I think, for the most part, I think he's probably a 70 to 85 inning guy total innings. I don't know if he's going to be able to throw like anywhere close to a full season. I don't even know if you're going to want him to throw anywhere close to a full season. We'll see. I mean, he does, he has really, his command isn't great. So, the high walks could be an issue. So I would tread lightly, but it's worth watching. You never know. I mean, he could get on 12-team mixed league radars.
Yeah, certainly somebody to watch out for. The strikeouts make it interesting. Beyond that, I think you're probably going to take a little bit of risk here if you're starting him early in the season, just with the high walks. There could be some volatility there. And Luis Gil. Moving over to San Francisco, Blake Snell, a 2-time Cy Young winner, finally gets a deal. He's signing with the Giants. Jordan Montgomery's still a free agent. He's connected to 4 teams. But Blake Snell lands in San Francisco. I mean, if you drafted him, this is about as good as you could hope for, right?
Yeah, I would say it's like, I think the ultimate landing spot for him. But with that said, here's where I backtrack on that. Petco and Tropicana weren't bad pitching parks, and he's had some really terrible seasons, especially after winning the Cy Young. So, I would still, I'm still not drafting Blake Snell, but I can understand the allure. I mean, he does have really nice strikeouts, obviously, and it is a good park. It's the division. He just won the Cy Young in that division. So clearly that's not that big of an issue for him. I mean, I don't hate Blake Snell. I feel like my dislike of Blake Snell is basically comes down to his command is awful and how bad he has been after career years in the past. Like he has had some insanely good years, like when he won his first Cy Young, and that has been really miserable. And last year's Cy Young was really predicated a lot on like a low BABIP. He had a terrible walk rate. So I can see the draft pick. I'm not making it myself.
Yeah, I will say if you're basing it on, oh, well, he won the Cy Young and then he was bad the year after. The year after was 2019, Ray. We've already decided 2019 doesn't count for anything across the board. No pitcher looked good in 2019. Like, I kind of find that as a
if you're looking, I mean, not just 2019. I mean, 2021 was bad too. I mean, it's like he's a guy who he's had a bunch of seasons where he hasn't thrown a full year. He's fine at his price. It's just not. I'm just not in personally. And like I said, I'm not necessarily like I don't look at other people drafting him and think like that's a terrible pick. It's fine, but he did have command issues, and he has had like he's been a struggle to stay on the field some years. He's had like the bad command alone should be enough. And if you want to draft him, go for it. I like I said, I'm not that against him. I'm just not drafting him. Where he's going is not where I'm taking him.
All right, fair enough. Let's keep moving on. I think, even if I will say that I think you draft him for strikeouts, and then, the rest kind of is sugar on top if it happens. That being said, I like him a lot more than you do. It sounds like, Jordan Montgomery, we'll discuss him if and when he signs. New York, Arizona, Boston, Baltimore are the 4 teams that have been linked to him. We'll see where he lands. Moving over to some prospects, a couple got sent down in Jackson Holliday and Paul Skenes. I think, arguably, or maybe not arguably, the number one prospects on their each side of the ball. I assume we're going to see them fairly soon. They're sent down for not, ridiculous reasons. But when do you think that'll actually be? How do you look at, guys like this who are top prospects? How long are you holding them for? Or is this kind of an indefinite hold if you've drafted them?
With Jackson Holliday and Paul Skenes, I think they're holds until they come up, which I don't think is going to be very long. I was saying, I think, with Jackson Holliday, actually, I just drafted Jackson Holliday in the main event league too. I think we got him at like 275 overall, which feels like a steal. Like I get that he got sent down, but I mean, what's the latest he comes back? I mean, right now they have Ramon Urias playing third, which is, then the infield will rotate when Holliday comes up. So it's like Urias is basically Jackson Holliday's fill-in. And last year, in like, I want to say 116 games, Urias had 4 homers and 3 steals. It's like ridiculous. I mean, he's terrible. Like, Urias is really bad. And, it's like, this is just clearly a service time thing, which sucks. I mean, obviously, it's like the stupidest. We have we like the stupidest sport with baseball. The fact that they send down guys who are totally obviously ready. So I don't know when the service time situation happens. I think early May now. Like it changed. It used to be June, but that's changed with the CBA. I think he could be up within like 3 weeks. Paul Skenes is another one. Like, if anyone who saw him in spring training, he's obviously ready. I mean, I was saying, I think I said this on Razzball, that was like, Colton Cowser or Jared Jones for respectively the Orioles and the Pirates. Like, they promoted those 2 guys. So that means they don't really think much of them. I mean, that's basically, it's like an insult to get promoted by the Pirates or the Orioles on opening day. It's like, oh, Colton Cowser made the opening day roster, so we don't really care. Basically is what it's saying. And the same with Jared Jones. It's like, yeah, Jared Jones made our rotation because we don't really think much of him. I mean, that is clearly what's going on here. So yeah, I mean, I like Jackson Holliday and Paul Skenes a lot. I think Holliday actually could be called up sooner than Skenes, but maybe close. I don't know. They might be similar time frames. I'm not sure when that is either. I'm hoping within like early May area.
Yeah, I would also agree. I think we see Holliday first, just because, with hitters, there's not a limited number of bullets, that they can throw. There's no innings restrictions on them. Whereas pitchers, there's certainly some of that. So I would agree. I think they probably keep Skenes down just to manipulate the innings, manipulate the service time, do all of that, and then we'll see him eventually. And I think we probably see Holliday, barring him going to AAA and struggling for the first time in his major league career. I'd say we'd probably see him up by the end of April at the latest, and probably like 420 weekend is probably realistic in regards to the short timeline. So yeah, absolutely holding on to both of them. I think if you have roster space, like I drafted Jordan Lawler, I'm hanging on to him as well. Maybe if you have all 3 of them, you don't hold on to all 3, but you probably shouldn't have a ton of prospects in a short bench league unless it's some kind of dynasty or keeper. But yeah, definitely worth holding on to, because these guys have game-changing potential when they come up, and if you drop them, you're just going to spend a ton of fab later. On the positive side of prospects, and we kind of expected these to happen, but Jackson Chourio, Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter all got their own roster spots. They've all kind of signed deals, so that made it a little easier for their teams to make that moves. What do you expect from them? I know Chourio you're really high on, but Langford, Carter as well. Let's discuss these three who've made rosters.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like, oh my God, they're so good. These guys are so good. I love them all. I kind of wish I had Langford. I kind of wish I was drafting Langford earlier in the year, earlier in the preseason, more aggressively, because I was a little bit hesitant on Langford because I did feel like they had they had basically, like, the Rangers had the best year you can have by winning the World Series. So I wasn't sure. It was like, if they could win the World Series without Langford, I was thinking maybe they would play games with his service time, but I was totally wrong. And he also, I mean, he definitely played his way onto the team by, I think leading spring training in homers, maybe close to it. If he's not the home run leader, he's probably close to it. Yeah, I mean, I think Langford looks like whatchamacallit, Paul Goldschmidt in his prime. So 35 homers, 17 steals, 280 average ish, ish on all those. But that's basically what I see for Langford. Not necessarily this year, but that's Langford in his prime. Maybe, rookies can be a bit of a crapshoot, so you're not exactly sure what you're going to get. But that's what he can do. What he is going to do this year, I don't know. I mean, the projections love him. Like, even, who's Rudy, who's usually very conservative when it comes to rookies. Rudy's drafted Langford in a bunch of places too. Like, Langford looks good. Like, he looks like, even the projections that are usually very conservative have him around like 25, 15, 265. That's as a rookie. I mean, he's basically the rookie of the year, AL rookie of the year. I mean, that seems like, it's hard. It's hard to see a downside from that if that's what he's giving you, and you have to draft him at, like, roughly at this point. I think he's probably going around like 75 to 100 overall in shallower leagues. Obviously in the main event, we had to draft him a little bit higher, but in most leagues, I think 75 to 100 is probably like where you have to take him. Jackson Chourio, again, Rudy, who's usually very conservative, he's drafted Chourio in a bunch of places. So he looks like, I think I compared him to Ronald Acuna Jr. On, Razzball in the early preseason. Like, Chourio looks like he could be, again, rookies are crapshoots, but this year he looks like he could be 15 to 20 homers, 30 plus steals, 255 average. That's really good. I mean, for a rookie, that's excellent. So again, that is, around 75 to 100 overall is probably where you have to draft them. I'm fine reaching if you have to. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I drafted him during the main event draft. I've drafted him in other places. Rudy has drafted him, I think, even more places than I have. Like, Steamer really loves Jackson Chourio. So yeah, I'm all in on both of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I like all of them. I don't have as many shares of Carter and Langford as I would like, mainly because just like their price was it was really elevated for, like, Langford. Again, you weren't positive he was making the team, and he was going ahead of like all of these guys in some cases. It's funny that, like, Carter is the one we've seen at the major league level. He hit 300 in 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases in 23 games last year as a 20-year-old. And, like, he's going after Langford. And if you look at projections, like, it seems like that time in the majors actually hurt his projections a little bit versus, like, since we didn't see Wyatt, there's no heavy K rate. There's nothing to, like, pull away from the numbers negatively. So the projection system looks a little bit better on him. And then
That's
Chourio,
that actually that reminds me of I think I might have said this on the site, but it reminds me of how like Mason Wynn is basically an afterthought this year. Even though his minor league numbers looked great, he looked great before he came up, and because he had a bad September, he like no one's drafting Mason Wynn because he had like a bad 30 game sample or something.
Yeah, and I actually have a lot of shares of Mason Wynn this year. They announced in spring training it was basically his job. So I've been grabbing up everywhere. It seems like the prospect fatigue hits earlier and earlier in guys' careers every year we do this, Gray. So I think Mason Wynn is a nice name to bring up in this conversation as well, because he is being ignored, kind of like Colton Cowser was as well. He's made the team, so maybe he gets a little bump in drafts now. But it just seems like a lot of these guys were being ignored for whatever reason. And like Jackson Holliday, we knew he wasn't as a lock for making the team, but he's going 40, 50, 60 picks past Langford and Chourio. Like, that seems ridiculous to me. I know you're maybe not as high on Holliday as you are on Chourio, but still, like, we're talking about guys who have ridiculous upsides, and to get them 50 picks later just seems like somebody's going out of order here. Let's move over to to an injury. Matt Mclain, we've talked about the Reds all preseason, Gray. They are slowly hurting my plan to simply draft every Reds player, because Matt Mclain is now having a shoulder issue. He's getting a second opinion, may or may not require surgery. That's what he's getting the second opinion for. He's definitely going to start the season on the IL. And TJ Friedl also put on the 60-day IL for the Reds. It's a tough time for us Cincinnati fantasy bandwagoners, but at least Benson, Fraley, Steer all seem like they are locks to play now, Gray.
Yeah, no, definitely. Also, Will Benson, a lot of people have, he's actually had some helium this draft season. He's moved up a bit on draft boards. He's had he's had a solid-ish spring, shown power and speed, not hitting for average, but it's spring training. I'm not really worried about that. Yeah, it's a small sample. I think he's looking like he could be the projections really like him too. Like he's like a 15 homer, 20 steal. Projections say 225 average, but that's kind of ridiculous. He looks like probably 240. Maybe it depends, because he does have a bit of a strikeout problem. Jake Fraley, who we liked, he had it was a bit of a struggle to get him playing time when Mclain and Friedl were healthy, but now that they're gone, Jake Fraley sounds so inhumane. Now that they're gone, Jake Fraley looks good, for speed and power again. He had a great year last year. He was getting totally slept on prior to the injuries, which I guess his playing time was squeezed, so I guess I could see it. But yeah, no, I mean, these guys all have playing time now. They're the Reds basically have just junk on the bench that is not, I mean, they had so little junk on the bench that they had to go out and get Santiago Espinal just to have more junk on the bench. So I mean, these guys are all going to play. Like Jake Fraley maybe sits against a few tough lefties, but not. I mean, it's like I can't imagine like a scenario where they pull him from games because a lefty comes in, like that's, so not a strict righty lefty platoon, maybe like 70-30. Same with Will Benson. I mean, who are they pulling these guys for? Like, it's like they, Stuart Fairchild. I mean, come on, Bubba Thompson. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they've basically gone from like, Kim Kardashian's amount of junk in the trunk to like Taylor Swift. We've just shrunken that completely down, Ray. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to know at least the playing time is there. So, yeah, let's go ahead and move over to Pittsburgh, where Jared Jones makes the rotation. 22-year-old fastball, slider, changeup guy, 82 innings at AAA last year, 4.72 ERA, 1.32 WHIP, 28% K rate, 9.7% walk rate. 16 and a third innings this spring. He has given up no earned runs, has 15 Ks and 8 walks. I mean, not really a prospect of any kind of big name or anything, Gray, but has put up a very clean spring and has earned his spot at least to start the season for Pittsburgh's rotation.
Yeah, he looks like the biggest trap for fantasy baseballers. I mean, he looks like he is going to kill people. I have not gone near Jared Jones. I probably, I didn't even add him to my rankings. I mean, like I said earlier about the Pirates, it's like when you're the Pirates and you announce that a guy is making the rotation out of spring training, it's like you gotta look twice at the guy and be like, is he really good? Because why are the Pirates starting his service time clock? Like there's something here it should worry you when he has, like, in spring training, small sample size, obviously, but his K per 9 was 8.3 and his walk per 9 was 4.4. Dude, I know it. I know it's a small sample size, and I know it's like, he was throwing, he was throwing hard. Like his stuff, quote unquote, looks good, but I'm not messing with that, man. You know what? If people have, like, if you have a flyer to take and everyone else is gone, I guess you could try Jared Jones, but there's a reason why, no one was really talking about him coming in. Like his command is going to, if his command is over 4, he's going to be a mess. Like, it's just going to be really bad. And on the Pirates, like, you're looking at a guy, like the projections say he's going to be a 4.70 ERA guy. And yeah, I don't think that's probably that far off. Like that's how bad, like, he could be. So yeah, I'm not messing with him.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's simply a flyer at this point, and one you don't put in your starting lineup. You just wait and see. And again, if the control gets under control, then sure. But it really hasn't ever shown up at any level that I can see. You mentioned it's a small sample. Obviously, 16 to 30 innings is, but K's to walk is one of the very first things that kind of settles as far as ratios go. So you can actually take a little bit more from that than, like we would from an ERA, where it's one bad inning and a spring training where a guy might have been working on a pitch or trying to do something different. That's a little different than K to walk from a guy who you're basically taking his, like, spot in the rotation based off of 16 and a third innings that he's done this spring. So it's a different evaluation there. Moving on to a couple of closers dealing with injuries. Jordan Romano has right elbow inflammation. Still hasn't technically been ruled out for opening day. They're waiting to see if he can get back. It's going to be a last-second decision, they've said. Eric Swanson, who would be his backup, is also dealing with forearm tightness. I believe he's in the same situation where they have not officially ruled him out for opening day. There's, like, any number of guys who could potentially be the closer there if they're both out, right, Greg?
Yeah, I would guess Yimi Garcia. But yeah, as of the recording of this, we don't know how bad Romano's right elbow inflammation is, but it doesn't sound good. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is, like, even if he's back, like, quickly in April, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the kind of thing that flares up. Like, 6 months is a long season to have elbow inflammation in March. It's not good, man. I haven't drafted Romano. I would be worried. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be. I mean, anytime it's an elbow or forearm, there's definitely going to be some concern until you see them return. Yeah, Yimi Garcia, maybe Nate Pearson, maybe Genesis Cabrera if it's a strong lefty at the end of the game. But that's kind of what we're looking at until we get some word on Romano and Swanson. Jhoan Duran is going to start on the 15-day IL with a moderate right oblique strain. I think it's like Griffin Jacks or Brock Stewart there. Do you feel more comfortable with one of those guys or the other?
I've drafted Griffin Jacks in a bunch of places. I think it's probably his job. Also, a moderate oblique, as we know, like that's the kind of thing that sounds like, okay, he should be back in a couple weeks, but those flare up again and he's gone until June. Like he could be back by end of April, or it's like if he has one setback, then you're looking at like June. And Griffin and also Baldelli is like, he already gives other people saves. So I don't know. I haven't drafted Duran again since this news. I would probably just avoid him if I could.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any shares of Duran this year. I feel like he was going really early in drafts. The stuff is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but with kind of the way they split up saves and just the bullpen, it felt like he was going exceedingly early. Maybe just optimistic that he was going to get all the save opportunities. But yeah, I don't think Griffin Jacks or Brock Stewart are bad additions, depending on the depth of your league and what kind of closer options are available to you. Both had very strong seasons last year. Both had big velocity jumps. So I don't mind either of them. Devin Williams has a back issue. He's going to get a second opinion as well. It could be kind of any number of guys in Milwaukee as well, right?
Yeah, I would look at Payamps or McGill. I think Abner Uribe has the best stuff, but the Brewers are a cheap organization. They're not going to give Uribe any reason to have a higher arbitration than he's already going to have. So I think he's off the table. I think Payamps that's my guess, but it could be McGill.
Yeah, and if it's McGill, it could be a really nice start to the season for the McGill family, as Tyler McGill also got named the starter for the rotation for the Mets, Gray.
Yeah, I've drafted him a couple places. I think like he's a more interesting. Like he feels like a number 3 starter versus like the Jared Joneses and the Louis Gills who are like 5th starters, potentially thrown to the bullpen or even the minors. Or McGill feels like, I mean, he threw 126 innings last year. Like he feels like he could go out and throw 140 innings, 150 innings and be a number 3 starter. Like he hasn't had great success with his ERA in the majors, but his stuff looks great. Like there's no reason why McGill can't be a solid, like, say fantasy number 4 to 5, potentially a number 3. Like he looks good. I'm in on McGill.
Okay, it sounds like maybe you're a little bit more optimistic than I am on McGill. I don't know what happened last year, but the K rate kind of plummeted on him. I mean, if he can't get the Ks back up, which it could have just been a, kind of a weird season for him. That really kind of saps the fantasy value from him because he's not. You already mentioned the area has not really been good. The whip has also not been good. So if he can't get the Ks back, I don't know that I'm necessarily interested in McGill. I think it'd have to be a fairly deep league for me to be going and adding him unless I really needed just somebody that was starting. Moving over, Eury Perez is also going to start the season on the IL with right elbow inflammation. At one point, the Marlins rotation was going to be a really tough spot to earn, and now not so much. It looks like Max Meyer may get the 5th starter, although they haven't officially named him that I've seen at least. They've also said Sixto is going to make the roster, so maybe it's Sixto or Meyer, or maybe they combo those guys. I'm not exactly sure what the back end rotation looks like until one of Eury, Cabrera, or Braxton returns.
Yeah, the Marlins rotation is equals sign Reds lineup. That's
They made the Kardashian Swift comparison too.
In February, they both looked really good. Now, not so much. I have no faith in Eury Perez. Like they were saying, he's already playing catch, but I have no faith in Eury Perez coming back and being really a reliable starter this year. We'll see. Max Meyer. Again, talking about no faith. I have no faith in him. AJ Puck is kind of interesting. So they have so it's AJ Puck, Ryan Weathers, Trevor Rogers, Max Meyer as the rotation behind Luzardo in Miami. AJ Puck looks solid. Like he has great strikeouts. The only issue with Puck is how many innings can he throw? Maybe he tops out at like 100, 110. Maybe that feels a little bit on the high side, but if he can do that, he could be a breakout. Like he looks really good. Like out of all the guys we've talked about, I like Puck better than like McGill. And I seem to be on the higher end on McGill than you were, but I like Puck even better than McGill. I think Puck could be a total breakout. Like I would pick him up in just about any league outside of like, a 10-team mixed league. So say 12-team mixed league or deeper, I would grab Puck. He looks like, he could be a high strikeout, and he has pretty solid command too. We'll see how he looks now that he's not in the bullpen. So, it's like going from the pen to the rotation is, sometimes that jump is not easy for guys. So we'll see what happens, but it's worth seeing what happens while he's on your team.
Yeah, Puck has looked really good this spring. The stuff has always been good. That's why he was the prospect that he was. I feel like he got moved to the pin more out of like necessity than like anything he had done, which is weird because it's not like Oakland has been trotting out, amazing starting rotations for the last 5 years. So that felt a little weird. It's nice to see that he's going to get his shot back in the rotation. I would agree. I like him more than any of the guys we've talked about. These last 3 guys we've talked about, there's definitely some innings concerns and that how deep is he going into games and how many innings can he throw? But you could really say that about any of, him, Max Meyer, McGill, and that would still stand. So of them, I would agree. Puck's probably at the top for me. I would go Max Meyer and then McGill, but it sounds like you're the other way around. Jared Triolo, he's gonna make the Pittsburgh roster, slated to start at second base, so he should get at least dual eligibility, as he should already have third base in your leagues. 54 games in the majors last year. He had 3 home runs, 6 stolen bases, hit 298, 388 with a 30% K rate and 11.5% walk rate. 53 games at AAA. He had 2 home runs, 10 stolen bases, hit 286, 412. There wasn't really a high K rate in the minors, or in the low minors at least, but in AAA and the majors, the K rate really ballooned. The walks are still there, though. Do you think Triolo can get the K rate back under Controlio?
The Pirates, Jared Jones and Jared Trilio. They're going to Jared. Is that because they're cheap AF. Trilio is actually like, I like him a lot for like NL only. I don't think he's a mixed league guy yet. He could be though. It depends on like you mentioned, the K rate. It depends on how well he can make contact. He doesn't have super high upside, I don't think, but he could be very valuable for a deep league. So I don't mind Trilio. Actually, I prefer him over, the Pirates were looking at Pagoro or Trilio, and they ended up going with Trilio, which I don't mind. I think it's a a solid, he's a solid back end for a deep fantasy league.
Yeah, he's kind of like I don't know. He's gonna give you something like a good John Birdie line. I feel like if things go in the right direction, like mostly steals, maybe some average, but he's hitting at the bottom of a not great Pittsburgh lineup, so not ideal on that front. Sal Frelick is been announced. He's going to play at third base. Nothing really to say here other than it's nice that he's going to get dual eligibility. If you're with Gray and drafting Sal, then you're going to enjoy that.
Yeah, agreed.
Over to New York, where there's some more third base talk. Brett Baty makes the roster, beats out Mark Vientos for the job, at least to start the season. Baty had 108 games in the majors last year, hit 212, 275, 323, 9 home runs, 2 stolen bases. He did have 26 games at AAA where he had 10 home runs, 2 stolen bases, and hit 298. Baty is definitely over AAA. The question remains, is he more than quad A? Do you think he is Gray, or is this just until they think Vientos is more prepared?
No, Vientos, I forget the numbers exactly, but Vientos is hitting like 150 versus fastballs or something. It's somewhere between like 120 and like 175 on fastballs, something terrible, like something like unstartable. Like if you can't catch up to a major league fastball, it's just not going to happen for you. So Vientos might be a quad A player. I like Brett Baty. I think he had a terrible rookie year, but he's still pretty solid. I mean, he was real. I mean, he has huge power. As he's showing in spring, he can beat up on, bad pitchers, which is fine. I mean, there's plenty of bad pitchers in the major league. So I don't mind Brett Baty for super late in a deep league. If you've punted like corner man or utility.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. I think, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, where the shine goes off of prospects so fast now that it just, you kind of just move past them. Brett Baty is a good prospect. Like, he has legitimate power. He hit, at least decent to start his career, and just kind of faded at the back half of the season. He dealt with some injuries. He dealt with going back up and forth between the majors and minors a little bit. So I do think there's better days to come from Baty. I don't mind him if you've waited, like you said, at a corner infield position. Casey Mize is going to make the Detroit rotation. I don't know that it's the greatest assembly of pitchers, but it's pretty upsidey, I guess. Like, you could make a case for almost anybody to be a solid pitcher of them. Mize is not removed from being one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball. Just the K's have not been there for our game, though.
Right. Yeah. It's weird because like Casey Mize seems like he should be an ace. His stuff, at least. Maybe he can unlock something, but I mean, he hasn't really done that in spring training. Like the ERA says he's been good, but the peripherals don't look great. So I don't know. I mean, it's fine as a flyer in like a 15-team mixed league or deeper. Sure, if you want to like take a flyer as like him as your, say, 8th starter or something, but he's not at like 12-team mixed league relevance yet, unless we see something, or maybe as a streamer.
Yeah, I think as a streamer, you could do worse. Obviously, returning after missing 2023 due to Tommy John. So, I feel like there's two things that happen in the first year from Tommy John. You have to check velocity, make sure that everything looks right on the velocity front. So far, so good from spring training. He's throwing 95 plus even. So from a velocity standpoint, everything looks fine. And then you look at the control. He has a 14.3% walk rate in 15 and a third innings in spring. That's not really what Casey Mize has done in his career. So that's the part that I'm worried about him kind of recovering from is he was a really good command pitcher. I don't know if he still is or will be immediately returning from Tommy John. So a guy you can look at, kind of mark as a streaming option or somebody to potentially pick up. I don't know that I trust him early in the season. Gray, I have to ask you a question. We talked about the Detroit rotation and, well, not the best looking. It does have some upside. Have you looked at the White Sox rotation that Michael Kopech couldn't make? Have you looked at it? Have you seen it?
Well, okay. So the funny thing is the White Sox rotation actually might be better than their bullpen. and both might be better than their lineup. The White Sox are probably going to lose more games than the Oakland A's. I mean, that is a horrendous team. It's really bad. Kopech, for whatever it's worth, I think he's probably better in the bullpen. His peripherals always look better in the bullpen. So I'm fine with him being in the bullpen. Like, I don't think they're really, like, they don't have really a team this year. The White Sox have punted 2024. They're and I don't know if they're necessarily rebuilding either. They're just like they're in a holding pattern until Reinsdorf kicks the bucket, I think is what's going on with the White Sox. So I don't know, not a great team. And I'm not interested in Kopech outside of a deep league where you're scrounging for saves maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely been some talk about him getting some look in the closer role. I picked him up in a league just to start him for this first 4-day week because I don't have enough starters to fill out, and he's still going to get starter eligibility. So you could use him in that fashion. Jordan Leisures looked really good. I would say he's probably the favorite for the closer role. It wouldn't surprise me to see Kopech get some opportunities, if nothing else, so they could potentially move him. But I would agree. I don't think he's like the starter or the closer. I will say, like, he had back-to-back seasons of 3.5 ERA in 21 and 22. Like, he was injured most of last year. It feels really weird for them to make this like proclamation that a former 3.5 ERA guy is no longer a starter. I realize innings have been an issue, so maybe that's what we're looking at long term here. But like, again, this White Sox rotation has literally 0 starters that even feel like they're MLB level starters. Gray. Their opening day starter, I think, is Gerrit Cole, followed by Mike Soroka, Eric Fetty, Chris Flexen, and Nick Nastrini. There's not even a time you can go back where this would have been a good rotation, Gray. Like, this is just bad.
Yeah, it's not good. I agree.
Okay, let's just move on and I don't know what's going on the north side of Chicago. South side of Chicago, or north side, really. They're losing it. Boston, Lucas Giolito obviously had Tommy John. I don't know if we talked about it during the pitchers podcasts or not. It looks like Tanner Houck and Garrett Whitlock are both going to make a rotation. Are you interested in them, Graham?
That was a big hole left by Giolito that 2 guys made the rotation instead of him. I actually like both guys. I think Tanner Houck is probably the weaker of the 2, just because he has been flip-flopped between the pen and the rotation so many times that I don't know if he knows whether he's coming or going at this point. So Hulk maybe as a streamer or if it's a deeper league, obviously. Whitlock is really interesting because he's actually been used as a starter a bit more, and he had 10 starts last year. He had over 70 innings. He's always had incredible command, which I like a lot this year because of the pitch clock rules. So if Whitlock is coming in and in 15 2/3 innings in spring training, he's only thrown 2 walks. Last year, he only threw 13 walks and 71 2/3. If Whitlock can have like a year where he has a 9+ K per nine and barely 1.5 walk rate, it's going to be hard for him to be completely terrible, I would think. Like, like last year his ERA was not good, but he also had a really high BABIP. But yeah, I mean, the BABIP will be a little bit high in Fenway versus other places, but I like Whitlock. I think he's probably not quite on, maybe the 6th starter in a 12-team mixed league. But he's definitely on radars, I think, for like, a 5th starter, a 4th or 5th in a 15-team mixed league. And yeah, I like him as a back end fantasy starter.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both, we're definitely talking about back end. Neither of these guys are going to lead your rotations. I guess if I have to pick one, I would go with Whitlock again. Like you said, just the control has always been good, so you can at least avoid that part of the blow up. That being said, I don't think I want either of them. I think Hawk's numbers might be fine, but they've never really let him throw deep in the games, even when he was a starter. So any starter who doesn't give you at least a shot at a win is really hard to, put in your starting lineup without some kind of, if he was like a 35% K guy, or he was doing, maybe like the Nick Pivetta thing where he was jumping back and forth, you could maybe find some value there. But if he's going like 3 2/3 innings, it really doesn't matter if they're good innings or not if he can never get you a win. So I would say I'm more in favor of Whitlock, but I don't really like him either. The velocity is down this spring. It's kind of been down even last year, which is when the ERA really ballooned. So I am a little bit worried just from a velocity standpoint that something happened and that could affect the numbers pretty bad. All right, great. A few last little items here. We're kind of bumping up against an hour and a half. We said we would try and shoot for an hour, but when we talk about Ohtani and how you built your 1st through 4th picks in your draft for 25 minutes, this is where we are. Dylan Cease got traded to San Diego. It was kind of out there that he was on the trade market, just where he would go. San Diego feels like a really weird landing spot considering they did everything they could to not compete this year. But Dylan Cease moves to San Diego. I assume they'll also look at moving him some point. I don't really understand this move.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think AJ Preller just doesn't like prospects or something. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not sure if they know what they're doing. Like, they went and traded Juan Soto for Drew Thorpe and then traded Drew Thorpe for Dylan Cease. Huh? I mean, I get it that Juan Soto is going to be a free agent and Dylan Cease is under, he's under contract for a bit longer. So I mean, I get that, but still, like, are you competing? Because your lineup doesn't look like it. It doesn't. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, you got Jake Cronenworth hitting 3rd. Not great. It's not ideal, I wouldn't think. And they have like 4 starters, and that's counting Yu Darvish and Musgrove, who I don't personally want any part of them. I mean, Musgrove might be a little bit safer, but Darvish, I mean, he's older, and I don't know. Darvish, I feel like, is on the way. He doesn't feel like he's not on the upswing, at least. Yeah, I don't know. The Padres don't look like they're competing, but they went and got Dylan Cease. So I don't know. We'll see, I guess. I think Dylan Cease isn't really helped either by the move. Like, to me, like his issue, like, Dylan Cease could be great. Like, and just like who I'm going to compare him to, like, he reminds me a lot of Blake Snell. Like, they both can be great. I just worry, like, Dylan Cease's command is, as it went really wonky last year, and it was creeping up for a few years. So if Dylan Cease can't command his pitches, I don't want any part of them. I'm out. I don't need the strikeouts that bad. So yeah, I think, he could be good. Like I said with Blake Snell, like they can both be great. I just worry a little bit about the command, and with Dylan Cease especially. So yeah, and I think probably the most interesting Padre right now for me is like Jackson Merrill and what he can do. They discussed. They said he was breaking camp with the team. Like obviously he went to Korea. Like he's starting with the team, and once you start with the team, it's hard to get sent down. So that should be a confirmation or give you confidence that Jackson Merrill will be up for good. And he's super young. Like I think, is he 21? Yeah, he's still 20. He doesn't turn 21 for a few weeks. So he's 20 years old, and his projections are pretty like they're looking at 12 homers, 12 steals, 255. But if a guy has 12 steals speed, he also has 25 steal speed with the pitch clock rules, especially someone who's as young as him. Like he could go 15, 25, 250, that's really solid. He probably has shortstop eligibility in your league, and he's going to gain outfield eligibility. So yeah, I like Jackson Merrill as like a flyer late.
Okay. Wasn't expecting to discuss Jackson Merrill, but that's a nice little name to drop here for everybody. JD Davis signs in Oakland. I don't know that there's a whole lot to do with that other than he should play every day, and he's a third baseman if you again are in deeper league and weighted at corner infield. Ian Happ has a left hamstring issue. They thought he'd be back for the start of the season, but he has plateaued. Patrick Wisdom, Nick Madrigal, also slated to start on the IL. Jamison Taillon is, well, we're just throwing all the Cubs players on there. I guess the good news out of this is Michael Busch, Garrett Cooper, Mike Tauchman have jobs for now. Chris Morel has a starting position at third base. That may have been true either way. And Bellinger probably plays some more first base, keeping his eligibility there too. I guess, are you interested in Michael Busch, Garrett Cooper, or Mike Tauchman as any of these replacement options?
Yeah, I would, I'll say that early, I think I forgot to mention it, which is my bad, but early in the preseason, someone mentioned to me that they felt like that Ian Happ was struggling to get healthy, and they thought it was going to be an issue for a while. So it's kind of my bad that I didn't mention that earlier in the preseason, but yeah, I would be a little bit concerned about Ian Happ just in general. Michael Busch, I mean, no Dodger prospects have ever been good after they've left the Dodgers. So I don't know necessarily if Michael Busch will be good for that reason. But yeah, I mean, he looks good, and he's had a decent spring. Like if you look at his AAA numbers are solid, like 27 homers, 323 average, a handful of steals. If he can translate that to the majors, I mean, there was at one point Michael Busch did look like a top prospect. Like he hasn't really, and the Dodgers never really gave him an opportunity. So yeah, if he can hit the ground running in April, I wouldn't be shocked to see Michael Busch break out this year. Like that could definitely happen. And the other guys that you've mentioned, I don't have any interest in whatsoever.
I didn't figure as much, Gray. Mike Tauchman has been around and clogging rosters for long enough that everybody knows what he's doing. I guess maybe if Cooper somehow had an everyday job, there might be a little interest, but as I say that, I assume he's the weak side of a platoon at best, and that's only until they get healthy. So yeah, probably not a whole lot of interest in either of them. All right, Gray, we are almost ready for the start of the season, or if you don't count the Korea games, the real start of the season. I'm excited, Gray. We're going to see how all of our rankings and draft. You have about 3 more days to claim number 1 ranker status until that's just gone because the new season starts. Good luck to everybody as you are setting your lineups for this first week. If you have questions, you can always find us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. Gray is the owner of the @Razzball account. Find us on youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy. You can like, subscribe, rate, review wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're watching us on YouTube, that all helps us. Until next time, Gray, talk to you later.
Happy opening day.